12th chapter. This starts with Arjuna's question to Bhagavan. And what is he asking? Now tell me, Lord, who is superior in meditation when he's meditating on you? Those who are meditating on your Nirvikara, Nirakara Rupa, Nirguna Brahman, or those who are meditating on the Saguna Brahman with name and form? That is a simple question. Because he, as we were discussing earlier, he has been spoken to at length by Bhagavan about both his Saguna and Nirguna aspects in the previous chapters. Bhagavan, having explained to him the Saguna aspects and how to meditate on it in the 8th chapter, the Dheya Brahma, he mentioned about the Jnaya Brahma or the Nirguna Brahma, calling it this is the Guhyatama thing, that is the most topmost secret, very difficult to grasp. Then he mentions about vibhutis, again simplifying that, okay, this is Nirguna, very difficult to understand. Okay, you look at me in different manifestations, like what is the name of the Veda, what is the month, and what is the text, what is the music. He mentioned what is the chandas. Wherever you see divinity, you recognize me as present everywhere. He's actually talking about the Nirguna and a Sarvatmaka Brahman, which you should recognize in everything. But in order to make it simpler for him, he manifests these as his Aishwarya, as his Vibhutis. And Arjuna, given the fact that he's finding it perhaps a little hard to clearly grasp the meaning of this Nirguna Brahma, he's a bright student, no doubt. He asks him, can you show me your Rupa, because you mentioned about all these Vibhutis. So why don't you show me your Sarvatmaka Rupa? If you have one, if you can show that to me. Bhagavan says, okay, you don't have the eyes, I'll give you that proper perception, the perceptual ability to be able to see that. And he showed him the Vishwarupa. Once he has seen the Vishwarupa, Bhagavan said, you meditate on this particular Vishwarupa. And that is what? That is Saguna Rupa, name and form, isn't it? Vishwarupa was available to him. Infinite, but nevertheless, something which appeared before his eyes. That means what? Bhagavan in that particular form can be seen through the senses, the eye. In his eyes, he could see him. Special perceptual ability, nevertheless, perceptual ability. But that Nirguna Nirakara Brahman cannot be touched, cannot be felt, cannot be heard, cannot be seen, cannot be tasted, because he is beyond all senses. And you can only reach there by doing vichara. No, this cannot be the ultimate thing. No, this cannot be ultimate. And finally, you discard all names and forms. Then you reach there. And when you reach there, you are no more there as an individual, but you become in non-different. You become one with that Sachidananda Swarupa. That is what we have discussed so far. Now Arjuna asked him, who is superior, the Saguna Brahman or Nirguna Brahman, and the Upasaka thereof? Which Upasaka is superior? The one who is meditating on the Saguna Brahman, or the one who is meditating on the Nirguna Brahman? Bhagavan will mention. The secret is known. Bhagavan has already clarified to him. You know, it's like the son asks his father or mother, whichever, Mama or Papa, tell me, what should I study? And he is not in a mood to do maths or science that evening. He wants to study some story books. And the Mama or Papa, the parent, says, why don't you finish some pending maths you had? Why don't you look up your science book? He says, but Mama, you are telling me that creativity is very important. So mornings are for maths and science, and evening one should be engaging with something which is creative. Can I write a story? Can I read and finish? There's a lot of literature to read. The mother or the father, they understand their son this evening or the daughter this evening is interested in relaxing, or his or her mind is not permitting him, is not conducive. The child's mind is not very conducive to very strict, stressful, analytical work of mathematics or science. He wants to study a few stories, and maybe some essays. He wants to relax a little. He wants to involve himself in some creative writing. They say, okay, you do it. Similarly, Bhagavan has already, by mentioning Rajavidya, Rajaguhya Yoga in the chapter 9, he has made it already obvious to Arjuna that the highest level of understanding of Bhagavan is being able to understand his Nirguna, Nirakara Rupa, to understand that fundamental reality, where you cannot use any words, you cannot use any literature, you can't use anything to describe it. However, Arjuna seems to be persistent to get an answer. Why? Because he is not yet ready. That is why he asked for the Vishwarupa Darshana. Otherwise, had he been a very good student of Vedanta, the Vedanta students are not keen on any Rupa Darshana. They want to have Jnana. So they want to study and they want to meditate. They're not necessarily super excited about looking at the appearance of Lord Krishna or Durga. It initially, happens in the spiritual life, in everyone's life. But once you study a lot of Vedanta, that fanciful aspiration that I want to meet God and he'll come and play football with me or play badminton with me, that goes. That is not there anymore. You ascend to a higher plane. Now, or you can call it higher, lower, whatever, but the mind is no more obsessed with the name and form aspect of the divinity. Now, Bhagavan recognizes Arjuna is feeling a little stressful and he wants to give him a simpler solution because, again, Arjuna has to do a lot of karmas. In 12th chapter is actually meant for karma yogins and encouraging them to do their karmas and do bhakti. That's why this chapter is known as Bhakti Yoga. And what did Bhagavan answer in verse number 2? Maya Vesya Mano Yemam Nitya Yukta Upasate. Having invested their attention and mind in me, those who are sincerely, without any interruption, meditate on me, do my upasana. They settle their mind on me. Shraddhaya Paraya. And how they do establish their mind in me? With a lot of love and affection. And that love and affection is paraya. That means this is not with any particular sakama sankalpatmaka buddhi, but it's pure parabhakti. So paraya upaste, those who do this kind of te yukta tamaha mataha. So they are to my mind me yukta tamaha. Those who do this worship me te yukta tama mataha. So that is how this is what he mentioned in verse number 2. We were left with this Sankara commentary on it. Let's quickly look at it. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Yetu Akhyar Upasakaha. Those who are Akhyar Upasakas, those who are meditating on the Akhyar Upasaka means Akhyar Brahma. Samyak Darshinaha. And they are what? Comprehensive understanding. They have self-knowledge. Their outlook is much broader, much more comprehensive than the outlook of philosophy or approach of the Saguna Upasakas. Nibrita Esanahati, and they have abandoned all these attractions for Putreshana, Vitteshana, and Lokeshana. And Tavat Tishtantu, Tan Prati Yad Vaktavyam Tad Uparistad Vakhyama. So I am going to mention that. Who is actually superior? Yetu itare mai vishwarupe parameshware aveshya. Those who focus their attention on me, the Parameshwara, the Vishwarupa, samadhaya, do the samadhi, mano ye bhaktaha, and they establish their minds, and those who do my bhajana, those who are bhakta, santaha, mama, sarva yogeshwaranam adhishwaram sarvagyam vimukta ragadi klesa timira drishtim. This blind drishti they have, limited perception. They have this blind vision of samsara because of raga dvesha. Those who have removed that blindness, vimukta raga dvesha and related and associated blind vision. Because raga and dvesha, they blind our perception. Because we have a very biased vision. That's what he's mentioning here. So they are free from raga dvesha, attachment, attraction, and aversion, and associated blinded vision, and they are sarvagyam, this Vishwarupa sarvagyam, nitya yuktaha, nirantarena, they are meditating on me. Atita anantara dhyan, ध्यायन्तः ukta slokartha nyayena. So whatever I have mentioned, earlier, he's saying, nyayena satata yuktaha santaha upasate. They meditate on me, sradhaya paraya prakristaya upeta. In a very excellent way, in the ultimate sense, that ultimate love and affection they have, me mama mataha, and this is my opinion. Abhipreta yuktatamaha. So they are yuktatama. That is what he mentions. Now, in the next two verses, he will immediately give a corrective. Why is he giving this correction? Because as students, we might get confused that Bhagavan is now refuting or dismissing what he himself has taught us in chapter 9 and what he has mentioned in chapter 7 and a couple of verses in chapter 2 and chapter 3 where he is pointing at the Nirguna Brahma, and that is the central message of Bhagavad Gita. And some of the students might get misled. So Bhagavan immediately qualifies it and he's giving a corrective. No, don't worry. It's not that there are others, the Akshara Upasakas, the Nirguna Brahma Upasakas are not stupid. They are also very great. But indirectly, you are not capable of that. Therefore, you focus on it. Okay? So, Nairantarena hi te matchittataya. So all the time, their mind is kind of preoccupied with me. Ahoratram atibahyanti ata yuktam. So they kind of all the time focus on me, the Saguna Brahma Upasakas, tan prati yuktatama iti vaktum. So that is what I have referred to as yuktatama. Yuktatama is most nicely united with me, and they are superior they are yoga vittamaha. They are superior in that yoga, that spiritual practice of attaining divine reality or associating with divine reality or having self-realization, whatever you call it. Then, kim itare yuktatama na bhavanti? Arjuna might think, Bhagavan, I told you there are two categories, Saguna Upasakas, Nirguna Upasakas. And you mean to say, so Nirguna Upasakas are basically duds, dumb people, not very good. Is that so? Bhagavan says, no, I didn't say like this. किंतु तान प्रति यद वक्तव्यम तत्सृणु. उनके लिए जो कहा जाना चाहिए, that I will tell you right now. What you need to understand about the Nirguna Upasakas, because Arjuna is not one. Arjuna has not yet reached that level of Vedanta understanding. So he's saying, okay, please listen to me. I'll explain to you what these people are all about. Tasrunu. Ye tu aksharam. So let's first do the sloka then. ये त्वक्षरं मनिर्देश्यम् अव्यक्तं पर्युपासते सर्वत्र गमचिन्त्यं च कूटस्थमचलं ध्रुवम्. Now there are two verses together, it should be read, but we'll do it one by one, not a problem. So these people, ye tu aksharam, they do Nirguna Upasana, and there are about 7 or 8 adjectives here to describe this particular Nirguna Brahman. Bhagavan, while showing Vishwarupa, mentioned that this particular Rupa you cannot get by reading Shastras, Vedas, by listening to the commentaries. So I am directly showing it to you, so you are very lucky. What is he trying to privilege? He's giving a lot of importance to the special connectivity of a devotee with the object of his devotion is a Saguna Nama Rupatmaka Satchidananda Rupa. That is what is giving importance there. Right now, the Nirguna Upasaka doesn't have access because the Brahman is talking about, that Brahman doesn't have a name and a form. How will you see it? It cannot be available as Vishwarupa because he has no Rupa at all. He has to, of course, read texts. He has to go back to Vedas, Upanishads. He'll go to gurus and acharyas and watch the life of the great men and extract, okay, they are Brahmanishta, so Brahma must be like this, and slowly he tries to realize it because that is not known, that is not seen, that is only understood, and that is understood directly by the practitioner. Somebody can tell you about it, that is Paroksha Brahmajnana. Aparoksha is direct perception. Then only somebody is self-realized. Bookish knowledge stays where it is. It doesn't take one beyond a certain point. So therefore he's saying, I will tell you about them. Ye tu aksharam. That is one definition of Brahman. So there is no vikara, there is no deviation, there is no lessening of that Sachidananda Rupa because he creates the sansara, he becomes any less. No. So then, aksharam, anirdeshyam, you cannot do any nirdesha to it. Why? Like, for example, if I say, if you're inside the train, can you push the train? No, you cannot. You have to be outside the train to push it. Now, how can you do point at Brahman? Brahman has to be outside of you. But Brahman is Sarvatmaka, so you cannot be outside Brahman. So how do you do Nirdesha to Brahman? It is not a Savayava, it's not a physical thing. Anirdeshyam. Avyaktam. Why is it Avyaktam? We will have a long discussion on it because it is Sarvatraga, it is everywhere. Okay, now you want to explain why, you want to use some words to describe. Madhusudana will give a lot of philosophical argument and it will be a little challenging, but I'll try to simplify it. He's saying that anything which is like for example, you call it a pencil, because there are several pencils. There is a particular name you're using to describe this as a pen or a pencil, right? Now, it has no name, no form. How would you use any words to describe it? So it is avyakya, it is avyakta, it cannot be described. Avyaktam. Paripasate. So they worship that kind of person. And sarvadragam. Sarvadragam means it goes everywhere. Sarva vyapaka, sarva vyapi. It is pervading everything. It permeates everything. Then you cannot think about it. Why? If you can describe something, you can see something through your eyes, then only can you think about it. If you have never seen something, can you think about it? No. I don't know. It can be fancy, but you cannot think about it. It is achintya. Something which you can think about, there should be at least some possibility that it can be real. Otherwise, if you do that chintya padartha, people will think there is some mental problem. Like, for example, if I'm thinking that there is a human being who has about 25 heads and he has 2,000 hands, and then his legs are made of diamond, I think like this. And you ask me, what are you thinking about? I would say that I'm talking about a very special human being I'm thinking about. And then I narrate, this is how that human being looks. What do you think about me? You say something wrong with this guy. So anything which is chintya, there should be at least some possibility that it is there in reality to be perceived through the senses. Something real. You may not have that at that moment. You're thinking about a rasgulla, it's right there in front of you. No, you're thinking about it because you want to get it for your dinner. So you can think about it. But if it's not there at all, it should be there in some form. If it's not there, how can you think about it? So it is achintyam. Cha kutastham. And what is kutastha? Kuta is maya, and kuta can be something which is not real but appears as real. We say na wo bahut not, is kutniti karta hai, bahut kuta. Kuta has something secret which has an appearance not so real. So maya is kind of referred to as kuta. And who is the adhisthana of maya? Brahman. Because that maya cannot exist in space. That sarva adhisthana, the maya creates everything, isn't it? This maya tatkarya, that magical power of God, everything appears as srishti. But that magical power is held by whom? Where does it stay? It stays in Brahman, that Parameshwara. Therefore, that kutastha, which is not vikari, it is stable. That maya thing only changes. It is parinami. There is no change in Bhagavan. There is no change in Bhagavan is not Sagunatmaka. I'm talking about the Nirguna Parameshwara. There is no change. That is Kutastham. And Achalam. What is Chalanam? Any kind of Vikara. There is no Chalana. There is no movement. No change in its qualities. Why? It has no qualities. What do you say by change in qualities? It has no qualities. Nirguna. Therefore, it is Achalam. Dhrubam. Why it is Dhrubam? Because it is Achalam. It is Dhrubam. It is stable. It is beyond all doubt. It is the same thing. And how can it not move? It is everywhere. What do you mean by move? If it is at a particular locality, you can say it moved from Delhi to Bombay. It moved from New York to Washington, because there are two different localities. If it is everywhere, move where? No. Therefore, it is there. Dhrubam. So that is, these are those who worship that kind of thing. So we will only analyze these words, and we will go to the next verse where he will mention about the qualities of this. But let's first This is here we have a definition of the Akshara Brahman. Let us make sense of it and then we'll go ahead. So in the verse number 3, Shankaracharya says, Kintu tan prati jad vaktyabhyam tastrunu ye tu aksharam anirdeshyam. Akshar or anirdeshyam, avyaktam. And why is it avyakta? Avyaktatvad asabda gocharamiti. Sabda gochara nahi hai. That means what? You cannot get hold of it by using a few words. Like, for example, you're using the word pen to point at this object. You're using the word paper to point at this object. But there's no such subject as Brahman. And therefore, it is not Sabda Gochara. Gochara means what? Vishaya. This is the Vishaya. This is the Artha. So this is Saktam Padam. This word is, and there is Sakti in this. And this is Sakya. It is having that Sakti. Sakya. And this is Artha and this is Sabda. This Sabda has a Vishaya, the subject. What is the object? This particular thing, Vishaya. This Gochara or Vishaya, this is this object. I call it paper. So paper is what I am telling, and this is what I am referring to. When I say Brahman or anything, I'm mentioning the word Brahman. But is there an object that you can touch? It is there. But is there an object you can touch or feel or see? Therefore, it's not Sabda Gochara, cannot be described in words. No nirdeshtum, and therefore you cannot do nirdesha. Sakyate, nirdeshtum sakyate. Ataha anirdeshyam, because you cannot point at it, and therefore it is anirdeshyam. Avyaktam, and why is it avyaktam? Na kenapi pramanena vyajyate iti avyaktam. There is no, what are the pramanas we have studied? Pratyaksha, anumana, upamana, right? And then we have arthapati, shavada, and arthapati, pratyaksha, anumana, upamana, and shavada, arthapati, anupalabdhi. So all these pramanas tell me where you would fit it, this Brahman. You cannot get Brahman. Pratyaksha you cannot have because it's not an object of senses. Upamana, anumana you cannot have. So these have all been refuted. We have had some discussion earlier when we were doing Tattvabodha, Atmabodha. So there is no way in which you can actually see it because it's not different from you. It is not outside of you. And there are, so it is not any pramana, you cannot reach there. Iti abhyaktam paripasate, parisamantat upasate. What do you mean by parisamantat? That means comprehensively they meditate on this, they do upasana of it. What is upasana? This is a beautiful definition of Shankaracharya. Those of you are interested, you can remember it. Okay, what is a upasana? Upasanam nama yatha sastram upasyasya arthasya. So I would say upasya is Lord Vishnu. And how do you meditate on Lord Vishnu? You study Vishnu Sahasranama, you try to make sense of each word there. Anadi, it doesn't have any adi, right? Amita Vikramaha, so his powers are not parimita, cannot be measured. Therefore, is Amita Vikramaha. So there are several Ameyaha, Prameya, all these Aprameyaha, you cannot know him through any pramana. So these 1,000 names are given to Lord Vishnu. These are all Tattvika. These are not like Hari and Rama or anything. They don't refer to anything. They are conceptual words to help you meditate on him. Right? So here you read Vishnu Sahasranama or Purana, then you do Chintana. So what he's saying, what is that Artha? Upasasya, Arthasya is Lord Vishnu. That is Shastra, whatever you have studied. Yatha Shastra Upasya. So as per Shastra, whatever you decide to meditate on, Arthasya. And what is that Artha? Artha is that particular object. What is that? Arthasya Vishayikaranina. So you make it the object of your thought. That is the Vishaya. You are thinking about a pen. You are thinking about a pencil. You are thinking about a flower. Similarly, you think about God or Lord Vishnu. Vishayikaranina Samipya Anugamya. And how will you do it? So you have a deity of Lord Vishnu, or you have a book, or you have a temple, or you mentally reach closer to him. Means you remove everything else from your mind. Samipyam upagamya. Taila dharavat. If you have ever seen, maybe Sanaji may have seen, he is in the agricultural sciences. You know how they extract the oil, if you have seen it in the tribal areas. What they do is they take these oil seeds, whether these are neem seeds or sesame seeds, whatever. They have a cotton in which they put these oil seeds and they tie it up. Okay, so it's like a small bag, and then what they do is they put two stones. This stone below, there's another stone, and there is a kind of a plate on which they put that particular bag, and they'll press some, big stone on it, and then they will have an exit point where this oil will drip and pass through that exit to a container, and it will fall there. And if you watch it, it's very beautiful. Initially, there will be no oil coming, but after about a few minutes, maybe half an hour or something, you'll find that the oil is kind of falling from that exit point to the container exactly in a straight line, like a small thread, and it continuously falls. That is Taila Dharabat. Why this particular example is given? This is in order to tell how to stabilize the mind, that the mind doesn't jump around and it remains stable and it continues to meditate on whatever it decides to meditate on. So you are thinking about Bhagavan or anything, you are watching your breath, but it should be Taila Dharavat, continuous but without any distraction. That is the simile which is given. Taila Dharavat Samana pratyaya pravahena, that particular pratyaya, that particular thing, that particular movement of the mind, one pratyaya, there is one chintana, and there's samana pratyaya, there are not sajatiya, same thing. You are meditating on Rama or Krishna or Jesus or Allah, whatever, it continues to flow like that. Pratyaya pravahena dirgha kalam yadasanam, when you can hold on to that sort of a mental condition, that kind of a mental peace or tranquility or stability for longer period, that is what is called upasanam. Tad upasanam achyate. That is what is. So upasana, normally also the pujas and all we do, that is all upasana in a normal way. Similarly, if you are doing, say you are, uh, you beautification of your spiritual altar at home with flowers, light, agarbatis. These are all part of upasana. These are upasana angas. The serious upasana starts when you sit and you meditate on your Lord. Whosoever is your esteemed Lord, you're continuously meditating on him without any distraction. Taila dharavat. Sajatya Prabha. You are not thinking about many things, but the same thing continues. That is the beautiful, definition of what is upasana. And then Akhyarasya Visheshanam Aha. Why Akhyara word is used? Why Brahman is Akhyara? Akhyara, why he's saying Sarvatragam. Okay, he has not explained much. Akhyara is as others. Okay, there are a lot of other people who have mentioned. We'll go there. Akhyarasya Visheshanam Aha. Sarvatragam Vyoma Vyapi. What is Sarvatraga? It goes everywhere. It is like space. Space goes everywhere. Can you find a place where there is no space? There is no Akasha. Akasha is everywhere. Pen, pencil, bed, your house, your mind, your hair. Wherever you look at, space is there. Without space, nothing can be there. Space and time everywhere. So, Vyomavat Vyapi. And then Achintyam. Why you cannot think about it? Cha Avyaktatvad Achintyam. Because to be able to meditate on anything, you should be able to use some word, some language to describe it. But it is beyond all language, so how can you meditate on it? So what is he trying to say is that, as we studied in the 6th chapter, when you remove all your thoughts, when you meditate on the self, everything falls. But that pure consciousness and awareness of the presence is there. That sort of a meditation that we had discussed in chapter 6, same thing is hinted here. So it is achintya, but doesn't mean you cannot do upasana or meditation on it. Meditation how? Because you are not indulging in thoughts, but you are sort of meditating on a state of consciousness by removing all of the thoughtfulness. So it is attention without thoughts. It is awareness without thoughts. You are not allowing thoughts to come in. Initially, yes, for vicharana. So, dhyana and yoga, the difference is in vichara, the jnana upasana, you will have some distractions. But overall dhyana remains because subject matter is same. That is what a professor does while preparing for his class. He's reading notes and making his class. He's fully attentive, but he's thinking about 20 concepts because you have to prepare a lecture. Otherwise, somebody who's doing japa and meditating, he's just thinking Taila Dharavat. There is a difference. So the jnana, vichara, and other things, they will have some changes in the mind, but the goal remains the same, and there is overall concentration. There is an overall focus. But there are some internal changes here and there. But this yoga kriya, this dhyana, the ultimate level, even though it is achintya, doesn't mean you cannot do upasana. Upasana and on achintya is also possible. That we have studied. And yadhi karna gocharam tana manasapi chintyam. Why achintya? जो आप आंख से, कान से सुन सकते हो, देख सकते हो, टेस्ट कर सकते हो, फील कर सकते हो, that is what you can think about in the mind. You cannot think about something in the mind which you cannot touch or feel or hear or see through your senses. The mind cannot also think about it. That's what he's saying. Chintyam tad viparitatvad achintyam aksharam. Why the Brahman is different? Because Brahman cannot be seen through the eyes or the nose, or it cannot be smelled through the nose or heard through the ears, and therefore it is achintya and also akshara, and there is no change. Why? This kutastha, it is known as kutastha. Drishyamana gunam antardosham vastu kutam kutarupam. So there are certain, it appears as something and it is different from that, and that particular thing is kutarupam. Kutastha means what? Kuta sakshim ityado kuta shabdaha prasiddha loke. Kuta sakhyam. Haven't you seen this? A guy, he gives this witness, kuta sakhi. Have you seen this? Yes, I have seen. And what happened? He will tell this. You have done? No, I have not done anything. I just watched. I just saw it. I was just there. So that's what he's saying, that this particular thing, that consciousness, that Atma, which is in us, it is kind of kutastha. It's like that Sakshi Chaitanya, that witness self. Tatha cha avidya avidyadi aneka sansara bijam. So there are different, this sansara, this whole world appears to be meaningful, attractive, and we run after it. Why? Because of ignorance that we can enjoy, that we can own over it, that life is permanent here, and we need to do everything to enjoy life as much as we can, but this is just like a dream. It will vanish any moment. So avidya sansara bijam, and there are a lot of this sansara bijam. There are many causes of this whole thing, our purva karma and the ajnana, the faulty understanding. Antardoshavat maya abhyakritadi sabdavachyataya. So this particular thing, how do you describe it? Okay, this sansara, which is ajnan ka kaam hai. Again, it is a product of our ignorance. Maya abhyakrita. That abhyakrita is maya that we refer to as, which is non-manifest. You cannot feel it, you cannot see it, but it keeps doing work. Adi sabdya vachyataya. Mayam tu prakriti vidya, mainam tu maheshwaram. That we have studied earlier. That maya, this magical power, that is what is avidya. Okay, mainam tu maheshwara, and this prakriti is maya. Arjuna, you please understand. Mainam, the owner of this maya, the adhishtan of this maya, the foundation of this maya is Ishvara. Like you are watching a film, what is the adhishtan of this film? The white wall on which this is being projected. Similarly, this Brahman is the foundation, the platform on which this maya is playing this game. Maheshwara, Mama Maya Durataya, he has mentioned it in, I think, verse number 18 of chapter 7, that, okay, my magical power is very difficult, you cannot understand it. If you want to understand Maya, the only way is you meditate on me. Then you will not be affected by this Maya. Otherwise, it is very difficult. She can cheat you, she can trouble you, she can put you in a lot of confusion. But if you focus your eyes on me, she cannot do anything. Why? Because, I am the Adhishtan, I am the boss of everything. He had said that there. Ityadav prasidam yat tat kutam. That kuta means that Maya. Tasmin kute sthitam. And who is there in that kuta? That the central figure, that is Brahman. Kutam kutastam. Tad adhyakshitaya athava, or that adhyakya, the owner of this kuta, owner of this maya, that is Brahman. Rasi riva stitam, kutastam, atayeva achalam. And therefore it is achala. There is no chalanam, there is no movement, no distraction, nothing. यस्माद अचलम तस्माद ध्रुवम, बिकॉज अचल है, घूमता फिरता नहीं है, कोई विकार नहीं, इसलिए ध्रुव भी है, निश्चित है. नित्यम, ध्रुवम मीन्स नित्यम इत्यर्थः. That is how we got all these beautiful explanations about this whole detailed explanation, okay, of what are these adjectives and how to make sense of it. Now, we could ignore these long debate which Madhusudana Saraswati makes, but I think I would touch upon it as fast as possible so that you don't feel that I have ignored Madhusudana Saraswati for this verse. Ye akhyara mam upasate tepi mam eva papnuvanti iti ditya gatena anvayah. So you see those, because Arjuna has said that you have two categories of devotees, the ones who are meditating on you as Saguna Brahma, the one with name and form, and there are others who are meditating on you as you without name and form, the Nirguna Brahman. So the second category of people, they also get me only, because I have name and form, I am without name and form. That's my choice, depending on who you are and what you're looking for. You want Sadhya Mukti, I don't have a name and form. That is the only way you should meditate on me. You want Krama Mukti, you want a bit of enjoyment in Sansar also, okay, you do Shaguna Upasana. Because if you start doing Nirguna Upasana, you will lose interest in Sansara. You have to be a total Sarva Karma Sannyasi. Bhagavan has already mentioned all that in chapter 5 and 6. Therefore, he is saying, Purvebhyo Vailakshanya Dyotanaya Tu Shabdaha. Ye tu aksharam, that two word, kintu. Why this two? Ye tu, lekin jo, that kind of thing. And you know, but those who worship me as one without name and form. What is that but word? He's saying in order to separate these two categories of devotees, the one who are dedicated to one with name and form, Saguna Brahman, the others are dedicated to Nirguna Brahman, tu Shabdaha. Aksharam, what is that? What we discussed, he's going to speak in several other words. Akshara means nirvishesha. There is no vishesha, there is no definite name and form or whatever. No vishesha. Nothing special about it. It's completely Shuddha Chaitanya. Brahma, Vachaknavi Brahmane. Now, what is Vachaknavi? This is a very interesting thing I'm mentioning. You know, there was this lady called Gargi Vachaknavi. She was the daughter of Vachaknu, and therefore she became Vachaknavi. Okay, Vachaknu Rishi's daughter. And then she belonged to the clan of Garga, and therefore she is Gargi, Strilinga. So Adivridhi and Strilinga came, so Gargi. So that Gargi was a great author, and she was a Vedic Rishika. And she was highly referred to, and she has authored a few verses in Rig Veda, and she had arguments with Yakinvalkya. And I read elsewhere that in Swalayana, the Sota Sutras, also there is a reference to her. So she was this whole argument that women cannot read Vedas is all a falsity, and some people are propagating it, and Dayananda Saraswati has summarily rejected it. And many great, reformers have rejected the argument that any category of people don't have a right to read the Vedas. But this is one powerful traditional orthodox interpretation, which was somehow shuffled into the discourse backdoor. Some people say Manusmriti was kind of contaminated with few verses added by orthodox people at different points of time. That is one argument by Dayananda Saraswati. And I subscribe to it because Manusmriti is a very good book with a bit of nonsense here and there, which may have been added later on, or maybe that society was so traditional. We're talking about 2,500 years back, so obviously he may have thought like this because we had slavery in other parts of the world. We had a lot of cruelties also, which were justified. It's quite possible, but in our context, we should not take those sections at all as having any relevance to our spiritual practice or spiritual theory. So he's saying, what he's saying, that Vachaknavi, that was a digression, the Vachaknavi Brahmana of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, That is chapter 6 to 8. There are a few dialogues on what is Atma. What is the nature of Atma? There are a lot of dialogues. And in these dialogues, prasiddham tasya samarpanaya sapta visheshanani. So these 7 visheshanas, akhyara, achintya, kutastha, dhrubam, achalam, okay, nirvishesham. These are all taken from those 2 chapters, 6 and 8, 6 to 8 if you combine them, of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Okay. Anirdeshyam. What is Anirdeshya? Now, in the light of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad and many other scholarly reflections, Madhusudana Saraswati is going to make it more difficult for us in order to make it simple. Okay, it's like he makes it difficult to make it clearer, right? Otherwise, it's like whatever you do, if you chisel it a little, the particular thing, if you're making a stone deity, you're an artist, the more time you spend, the more attractive it is. That is what Sri Madhusudana Saraswati does, because he's one of the greatest scholars. Anirdesyam savdena byapadishtum ashakyam. With words that he said, asavda gocharam means savdena na gocharam. It is not a visaya of sabda. Same thing he's saying, savdena byapadishtum ashakyam. You cannot do byapadesha. You cannot describe it. You cannot talk about it by using words. That means it's beyond language. Yataha avyaktam sabda pravritti nimittehi jati guna kriya sambandhehi rahitam. Why it is avyakta? Now comes the whole literature about language, bhasa vijnana. So without getting very deep into it and get lost, I'll try to keep it very simple at a surface level. Now tell me, there is a word called pravritti nimitta. Whatever word you're using, like you're using a word, let's say flower, or say love, or say raga, or dvesha, or atmiyata, samparka, all these words, you look at it. There must be something which provides a rationale for using that word. Like you say sambandha, that means there must be 2 people or 2 subjects or something, and you are talking about a relation. So that is the pravritti nimittaka. As a result of which I'm using this word. There must be a reason to justify the use of this word. That's all. Okay, pravritti nimitta is very simple instead of getting into details. Now he's saying, when you can have a pravritti nimitta, because of your pravritti means your desire of that word to have some relevance to use that word. Why Brahma? What is the purpose? Brahma is avyakta, cannot be described in words. In order to prove that, he's giving these arguments, taking from bhasa vijnana, the science of languages, literature, etc. He's saying any word to be relevant has to have something to do with 3-4 things. One is jati. Is it a class of things? Okay, look at all the nouns you studied in schools. What are they? Now they are saying countable, non-countable. But what are the categories of nouns we had studied? One is what? Material nouns, isn't it? Okay. And then we have common nouns, jati vachaka. Common nouns, proper nouns are naming words. Then you have material nouns. Then you had collective nouns, isn't it? Like a meeting, a parliament. These are collective committees, collective nouns. And then there was something called abstract nouns. What is abstract nouns? Which are gunatmaka, like love, affection, devotion. These are non-countable. You cannot count them. The other one is material nouns. Okay, it's a drabya vachaka. So if you look at these things, and then there could be, which are abstract nouns, but you can also say material nouns about a lot of actions also. You can, like, say confirmation, questioning. These are also words you are using to describe something. So he's saying anything that you talk about, any word you use to describe, that word that you're using will have something to do with either jati, a class of things, or guna, some qualities, or kriya, means some action, or sambandha, or relation. How beautiful. Look at the richness of the linguistic discipline we had much before. Linguistics in the West sort of emerged in the 19th century. But if you look at Sanskrit, it goes back thousands of years. So he's saying any word you use have to have something to do with a class of things, jati, guna, qualities, that is abstract nouns or whatever, or kriya, action or activity, or sambandha, is a relationship. You can put all the words you are seeing in this whole world, it will fall into any of these categories. Now he will say, now tell me this Brahman, is there any jati? That means that two, three Brahmans are there. How can you talk about jati? Man. Then you are saying a lot of men are there. So man is one individual out of a lot of individuals whom we describe as man, because you're talking about a class of people. Now, is there a class of Brahmans? No. There is no jati, because it is one and only. Then the same thing. Next word is what? Guna. Does it have any qualities? Is it a quality? Is Brahman a quality? A quality cannot stay in the air. There has to be a dravya. If you say love, there must be a lover. You say anger, there must be someone who is angry. You say affection, there's somebody who is affectionate. So there has to be somebody who carries that quality. Is Brahman a quality? Then who carries that quality? So it's not a quality. Then kriya. You say, where is it moving? It is sarva vidyaman. To have any kriya, there must be some space, but it is everywhere. What kriya is there? No, there is no kriya, because it will become vikari. It's nirvikara. And finally, what? Sambandha. No, it is just one only. How can you have sambandha? Sambandha requires two things to be there. Therefore, you cannot have any word to describe Brahman. He will have a long discussion, but I'm not getting into it. He broadly is trying to argue that because the Brahman, that Atma Padartha, Sachidananda Swarupa, neither there is a class of Brahmans, nor it's a quality, nor it is an activity, nor it is a relationship. Any word you use require any of these four things or multiple of these to be present. If they are not there, the word cannot adequately capture whatever you are referring to as Brahman, and therefore this is avachya or avyakta. That is what he's saying. Okay. Prabhutta sambandhehi rahitam. Jatim gunam kriyam sambandham ba durikritya. If you remove these four, sabda prabhrittehe nirvisheshe prabhritti or yogat, you cannot have any prabhritti, because it is nirvishesha. It is beyond all names. So how would you use a word to describe it? Kuta jatyadi rahityam. Why do you say that there is no jati, no class in it? Because he's saying sarvatragam, because it is everywhere. Jati means there must be at least two or three. Then can you talk about a class of things? It's only there everywhere. Sarvabhyapi, sarvakaranam, it's the cause of everything, and therefore there is no second Brahman. So you cannot talk about any class of Brahmans. Atah jatyadi shunyan. So therefore there is no jati. Why no jati? Parichinnasya karyasya eva jatyadi yoga darshanat. When you talk about a class of things, then obviously it is a parichinna thing. It has some limitation. There are two, three. Therefore, you're talking about a class of things. Brahman doesn't have a class of Brahmans. It's just one and only. And it is everywhere. That is what he's saying. It is aparichinna. Desa kala vastu paricheda sunya. It is not limited by space or time or physical entity. Okay? That we have discussed. Akasadinam api karyatva abhyupagamacha. And then, like for example, if you say akasa is also sarvabhyapi anything, but we are using a word, can't you argue like this? But he's saying, yeah, you can argue, but it is not karana. It is not. Akasa also has its own karana, that is Brahman for us. It is also a product. Akasa is also a product. It's not, it is not karana. It is a karana of other things. It is a karana of vayu, you can say. But akasa is also karya for us. It's Brahman which is there, out of which akasa. Ata eva achintyam. Therefore, you cannot think about it because it is avyakta. How will you think without language? Sabda vritti iva mana vrittirapi na vishayaha. So, if achintyam, so the way it is not a vishaya or object of description in words, it's also not an object of thoughts, because you cannot think without language. You cannot think about any words. Tasya api parichinna vishayatvat. Even if you want to think about something, it has some limitation. If something which is completely unlimited, how do you think about it? That's what he's saying. Tato bacha nivartante aprapya manasasaha iti srutehe. He's quoting the Kathopanishad saying, where even the sentences that you study and the mind, the thought process, everything, they bounce back from there. They cannot reach it. That is the Atma Padartha. Tari katham tam tomo upanishadam purusham prichhami iti drishyate to agreya vidya iti cha srutihi. Why are you then finding these Upanishad sentences which are there on Nirguna Brahma Paraka Vakyas are there? There are some sentences. What are they? They saying तंग औपनिषदम पुरुषम पृच्छामि, मैं वो औपनिषद पुरुषों को पूछता हूँ. आई एम आस्किंग दैट औपनिषद पुरुष. You are saying that it exists, that you can talk to it, and there is drishyate to agreya buddhya, very sharp mind, then you can reach it. These words are there. What do you think about these sentences? Then he will explain. Shastra yonitvat iti cha sutram, and the Brahma is Shastra yonitvat. Okay, because it is the mother of all the Shastras. That means what? It is existing and one can talk about it. This is Brahma Sutra. Uchyate. Then the Siddhanti, the expert, answers. The Vedanti answers. What is his answer? Avidya kalpita sambandhena sabdajanyayam buddhi brittau charamayam paramananda bodha rupe suddhe vastuni. Avidya kalpita. All that he's saying is this whole Maya is avidya kalpita. Avidya is ignorance, and out of that ignorance, this is fantasized. This is imagined to be real. And then there is a relationship between different things that we see. Sambandhena, Suddha Janyayam, Sabda Janyayam, and then something which is born out of words. It doesn't exist. There's Sabda Janyayam. All the words we, Bhasha Ramana Vikara Namadheya, we have studied that earlier, that we use a lot of words to describe this reality as real, but fundamentally these are not real. Sabda Janyayam, Buddhi Britta, all these minds we have, we're saying there is a friend, he's my enemy, he's my wife, he's my son, all that. Ultimately, all of it doesn't exist. None of us exist. What exists, all of us do, is Suddha Chaitanya, not with these names and forms. Then what do you think about these names and forms? And that we are thinking about all this. These are imagined things. This is Vyavaharika, phenomenal reality, not ultimately true. Buddhi Brittau Charamayam Paramananda Bodhurupe Suddhe Vastuni. So, Pratibimbite, Avidya Tatkaryoho, and all these, whatever is kind of, it is Pratibimbita, it's kind of reflected. Where? In that Suddha Chaitanya. That is Satchidananda Rupa, it's kind of reflected there. Karyoho, Kalpita Yor, this is all imagined. Nirvritti Upapattehe, Nirvritti, it's possible to have nirvachana, to talk about it. Upapattehe, Upacharena, it is just a Vyavaharika thing. So Upachara, it is a stylized way of talking about all these are different. Okay, and the Brahman is the Adhisthana, because there is only one thing. Who is talking about Brahman? We don't exist. There is only one Brahman, so the language and everything, is it all meaningless? No, it's Opacharika. These are manner of speaking. Because of ignorance, we exist as different from Brahman, and we are talking about Brahman, and therefore we'll meditate on Brahman. That is how Nirguna Upasana becomes possible. That is the secret here. Because of ignorance, we see ourselves as different from Brahman. And therefore, we think we can do Upasana of Brahman. Upasana, who is doing Upasana of whom? We are also Brahman. We are thinking about Brahman. What do you mean? When the water bubble is meditating on the ocean, is it different from ocean? No. How does it meditate? Because it thinks it's a water bubble, it thinks about ocean as different from it. The moment the water bubble says, okay, I'm the ocean, it's the ocean. It cannot think about the ocean anymore. That is how perhaps one can give that example, that we think we are different from the Brahman, and therefore we consider a need for meditating on it. Okay? Bisyatpat ataha tatra kalpitam avidya sambandham pratipaditum aha kutastam. And therefore that kutastha word is being used in order to talk about this imaginary relationship between us and Brahman. Yana mithya bhutam satyataya pratiyate. That particular thing which is false but appears as true. Tat kutamiti lokeihi uchyate. That is what people talk about as kuta. Yatha kuta karshapanaha. There is a particular silver coin. It's not a silver coin. It's made of something else. It looks like a silver coin. That is kuta karshapana, they say. Or they say another kuta sakhyam. Somebody who can just tell a lie, just keeps quiet. He's the false witness. That's a Sakyam. And then ityadu ajnanavapi mayakhyam. In this particular ajnana, or what is called maya, saha karya prapanchena mithya bhutam api lokikehi satyatya pratyamanam kutam tasmin adhyasikena sambandhena adhishtanataya tishtati iti kutastam ajnana tatkarya adhishtanam ityartha. Now there is a long sentence. I will just tell you in very simplified form. This Maya, out of which this sansara is created, paramarthika rupe, it doesn't exist. Fundamentally, it doesn't exist. But then it exists in our minds, in our language. We see each other as different. This is sansara. Okay. Now, if you ask me why, I will say there are a lot of people working on it. The neuroscientists are working on it, saying reality is an organized illusion. And then there are physicists who are also saying ultimately nothing exists. It all appears like that. All mathematics, everything is fine, but ultimately you cannot prove anything is existing. So we have to talk to them. So the Vedanta is also saying the same thing. He's saying that this is just an appearance, and this appearance, we are talking about a nirvikara thing, adhisthana of this whole Golaka Chakra, whatever appears. And that adhisthana is called Kutastha, we refer to as Brahman. As if that is different from us. But we are all part of that Suddha Chaitanya. But at a Vyavaharika level, we meditate on the Kutastha. And that is how the Kutastha word, that Sakhi Chaitanya, we are using it. Kutastham. Ajnana Tatkarya Adhishtanam. The ignorance and the cause of this ignorance, that means the sansara. And what is the foundation of the sansara? The Brahman. That is what we refer to as Kutastha. Edana sarvanopattihi pariharaha kritaha. So all these words can be meaningless. How can you meditate on the Brahman? Are you not same as that? That is all refuted. Ata eva sarva vikaranam avidya kalpitatvad tadadhishtanam sakshi chaitanyam nirvikaram ityaha achalam chalanam vikaraha. So because this Brahman or the Kutastha is the foundation of this whole imaginary phenomenal world which we call sansara, and therefore that is called what? And that is nirvikara. There is no change in it. That is the foundation, everything. The wall on which you see the film doesn't undergo any change because of the fight on the screen, and therefore that is called nirvikara. Okay? Oh, just 2 minutes, I'll finish this. Achalatvad, and therefore it is also called achalam, that is chalana rahitam. What is chalanam? Vikara. That is vikara rahitam is achalam. Achalatvad eva dhrubam, aparinami, that is nityam. What is dhrubam? Dhrubam is nityam. Why it is nityam? It's aparinami. There is no further modification. So achalam, achintyam, dhrubam, all are linked to each other. And then for etadrisam suddham brahma mam paripasate sravanena. And those people who meditate on me like this, no Vishwarupa darshana. But how? Sravanena. They listen to the Upanishads. Pramana gatam asambhavana opohya, by removing all kinds of doubts they have when they are thinking about it, because of the pramanas, the methods of knowing. They may have some doubts. Mananena cha pramaya gatam anantaram viparita bhavana nibritaye dhyayanti. In order to remove any opposite kind of meditation, we have studied all that. What is asambhavana? What is viparita bhavana? These are obstructions to thinking about the ultimate reality or having Brahma Jnana or Atma Sakshatkara. When you have Sansaya, Viparyaya, Rahita Jnana, that is Atma Jnana. Sansaya is doubt and Viparya is Viparita Jnana or faulty understanding. So this Asambhavana, Viparita Bhavana, when you remove that, Dhyayanti, Vijatya Pratyaya Tiraskarena. They remove Vijatya Pratyaya. That means what? Sajatya Pratyaya, Brahmakara Kritti. Continuous meditation on the Brahman. So there is no Bijatya. They don't think about a cricket match in between. Okay? Taila Dharavat Avichinna Samana Pratyaya. That we discussed already in Sankaracharya. Like a ray of, or like a ray or a thread of oil falling or dripping down from that particular machine or whatever instrument or prop you have to extract oil. Similarly, the brain has Sajatya Pravaha Silata. Pravahena Nididhyasana Sangyeka. And then you have the Nididhyasana. That is Ravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana Sangyakena. Having that Sangya of Nididhyasana, Dhyanena, Vishayu Kurvanti Ityartha. That means what? They are also not different from Brahman. But because of the Ajnana, by seeing themselves as different, they start this process of meditating on the Brahman. he is now explaining, even though Brahman is Sarvavyapi, even though it's Achala, Dhruva, it is not different from all of us. Can you think about that when you are part of it? How to think about it? In this long commentary, he says, yes, because because of ignorance, we see ourselves as different, and therefore we can actually meditate on the Brahman, which is Sarvatmaka. And I'll just do Uchcharan of the next verse and we'll take it up on Monday. The next verse, he is now mentioning Sanyamyendriya Gramam Sarvatra Samabuddhayah Trepapnuvanti Mameva Sarvabhutahite Rataha. So by controlling their senses, and we'll do that details. Indriya Gramam, all these senses that you have, these five Gyanendriyas, Karmendriyas, Sarvatra Samabuddhayah. So they don't have any attraction or raga dvesa. Why? Because the senses have been controlled. No more distraction in the mind. So whether they're looking at a fish or looking at a cricket match or looking at sweets or looking at an enemy, the mind is stable. There's no distraction. Te prapnuvanti mameva. Such nirguna Brahman upasakas also get me. Sarvabhuta hite rataha. Why they are saying Sarvabhuta hite rataha? Because the mind is so stable, they are doing Brahmakara vritti that they don't think about any evil of anyone else. There is no raga dvesha. So there are two things. One is that you have a very good goodwill towards all and no harm towards anyone because you are a sannyasi. They get me. So Bhagavan is definitely praising them, but he will say, Arjuna, you focus on what I am saying, you do Shaguna Upasana, we'll take it up tomorrow. So I stop these here. And any questions you want to ask, or we can do the Santi Mantras.